Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone's doing well today. I've got a video for you today talking about City Skylines 2 and where it's at, what I think of the game, and more importantly why I'm not going to be playing it anymore for a period of time anyway. I want to start off today's video by saying that any of the criticism that I mentioned really has nothing to do with the devs at all. Any criticism I've got mainly goes towards the publishers, Paradox. I think the devs are a really good team. They work really hard with the timelines that they're given, and I think they produce a high quality of work. And even though I've got a lot of criticism for this game, I don't dislike the game and I want it to succeed. CS1 was my second favourite game of all time. I've got a lot of hours in it and I really want CS2 to be really good. So that off the bat, I like CS2. I think it's a good game, but I've got a lot of criticism for it. So I'm going to go over those criticisms, but first I want to start with what I actually like about the game, because it's important what is good about the game to mention, because praise is just as important as hopefully what I've got today, which is constructive criticism. So first good point, I think everybody can agree on this, that the road tools, the road building tools are so much better than CS1. It's so much easier to create roads. I've been able to make some really cool intersections in CS2 that I haven't never been able to even attempt really in CS1. I mean, I've given it a go, but they've been very simple and I've usually just relied on other people's intersections from the workshop. So that is really good, and actually going back into CS1 and using those road tools really makes me wish that CS2's road tools are in that. So yeah, that's a really good point. The next good thing that I really like about CS2 is the graphics. There's so many more options. It looks modern and beautiful, and that goes into the next point, which is the camera tool. I'm a photographer as my hobby, so I love this. I love it so much, and to be able to have the control over the camera itself, but the world as well, so you can change the weather and the time of day, and it has complete control over everything from rain, so that you can get the perfect lighting you want for your picture. And that's, to me as a photographer, as I say, brilliant. I always love a game that's got something like that. The next good point is the deep simulation, and I know that there's a lot of it that's not implemented at the moment, but I think that the goal of achieving a realistic and detailed simulation is, it's a good goal to aim for. It might be a bit over ambitious. We'll have to see. If they can pull it off, I think it will be really good, but right now obviously it's not there, and that kind of is going to go into another point later, but we'll get to that. And the last big good thing that I want to mention is the bigger map. Or at least to me, I don't know if the map is actually bigger than CS1, but it feels bigger. And I think if there's a mod that comes out that unlocks it all the way to the edges, that'll be amazing. It will be absolutely enormous, and you could definitely build multiple big cities on the same map. But obviously that's going to have to come with optimizations. So those are the main good points that I want to mention. I could mention a lot more good points, honestly, and for all the bad points I've got, I could mention lots more of them. I could make it equal, right? I could absolutely do that, but what I want to do is put forward the most important things that I think need mentioning. Moving on to the things that I worry about with City Skylines 2, and it starts back with just when we found out that the big content creators had signed NDA agreements not to talk about the performance. And I'm not saying anything bad against the content creators from YouTube or anything, because I think if I was in their position, I would have done exactly the same thing. And I think they probably assumed, like I would have assumed at that time, that they didn't. Okay, we'll not mention performance if you ask us not to, because we expect and we assume that by the time the game's released and people have got their hands on it, that won't be an issue, and so it'll be okay. And I don't think they had any reason to suspect that wouldn't be the case. So it's not against them. My problem is that's a really deceptive, or at least it could be a really deceptive practice from the publisher, because they know the performance is going to be bad when people get their hands on it. They know if people say that beforehand, then probably not going to buy it or pre-order it. If you're one of those people that pre-ordered it or bought it on day one and were really unhappy with the performance, you're going to be really annoyed at that. So that's one thing. The second thing with the performance is the high spec requirements. Now, some people don't really have a problem with this, but I think that if people have bought a really good computer, and especially if they've bought or updated their computer for CS2 especially, then they absolutely deserve to expect their game to run at a much better frame rate than we currently get, to be a lot better optimized. Basically, we'll talk about optimization later on, because it's not I understand basically, or we'll understand why that's not such a big issue, but we'll come to it. But the next thing to do with performance is the game slowdown bug. Now this one is obviously, I think it's going to be dependent on what your PC specs are. So I think I'm under spec, or just under spec, for the minimum requirements of this game, and I would get decent performance, but I don't expect to get really good performance. I'm not expecting good frame rates or, consistent performance or anything like that, so I understand. But if I were to have a better machine, I again would be really annoyed if we were here right now and I had still bad performance, as people are saying, and this game slowdown bug, or misfeature if you want to call it, or whatever's happening that's not supposed to be happening, that's really putting me off at the moment, and I'm sure it's putting other people off the game, and it's one reason as to why I'm not playing the game at the moment. So that's the performance. I mean, performance is a thing, as I say, it's going to get fixed in time, so it's just something we're going to have to wait for, and I think the devs are going at a reasonable pace. The last update to performance was okay. Wasn't amazing for me, but as I said, I don't expect to have great performance on my setup. But I get better performance than I expect, so that's another point to them. So next section will be bugs. We all know there's a lot of bugs, too many to mention. All games have bugs, and as I just said before, as with the optimizations, I think the team do a reasonable job at sorting these bugs out. There was a long list in the last couple of patches of things that have been fixed or partly fixed, and I think they're getting through that at a reasonable rate. I've got no complaints about it. The next big thing is the lack of simulation, and like we all know, there's no new news to anybody, but the lack of simulation is really important if you're a person that, because there's lots of different players of CS2, let's face it, we all play with different play styles, different things are more or less important to us, but the simulation being such a big part of what was advertised and what they're aiming for, which I said is a really good thing, a really decent goal to aim for, it's not there at the moment, and that's frustrating. Yeah, again, that's just another tick on the list of things that are making me not want to play the game, and ultimately why I am having a break from the game for a while. It just adds to the empty feeling of the game when you go down into the details of things and you look and you just can't work out for the life of you why you're earning so much money, or why things are even working when you don't have them connected to anything. It makes the game feel very disconnected and very unfinished and very beta, and that goes into the lack of content. So that'll be the next thing, the lack of content. I really feel that CS2 had to be much more comparable to CS1 in terms of content at launch of CS2 and the end of CS1, if you see what I mean, in order to make people really want to jump up from the old to the new. We've all been sat there playing CS1 for years. We've had access to all of the DLC and mods, and just ways that the base game was improved over time. And then going into vanilla CS2, to me at least, feels like jumping into vanilla CS1 all over again, albeit with some graphical improvements, and you know, some DLC from that partly implemented into it. But then there's a lot of stuff taken away, so it, you know, that's why I say it feels like vanilla CS1, because give and take a few things, that's kind of what it is at the moment. I guess, you know, who wants to sit through the dev phase of CS1 all over again when they've already been through that phase, bought all the DLC, still enjoy playing the game for the most part? Obviously that's clear, because there's more players in CS1 than there are CS2 still. The next one is going to focus on mainly what's happening with DLC. This DLC pack, the Beach Assets pack, Beach Properties pack, was expensive for what it was, I think, anyway. Its description and what it is versus what it is vague, and it's lacking content. Honestly, I think I would be annoyed if I'd paid for that in the pre-purchase or in the expansion packs or anything like that. And I really feel like they need to be, the future DLC needs to be a lot more content or game mechanic driven, and based more closely on what it's supposed to represent. Because if beach properties can be used in an urban inland area and not look out of place, then why are they called beach properties? Why are they in a beach properties DLC? We've got, you know, loads of beaches in England and Europe, and I'm sure most all temperate climates have a beach, but they don't have necessarily palm trees. It's pretty rare. So why wasn't there any trees in this pack from a temperate coast? And then there's the next part, and this is really sore for me and lots of people, and it really needs to be addressed, I hope, in the next word of the week. Locking tree assets behind paid DLC. That is such a sore point with the community. I can't find a single example of anybody who thinks that this is a good idea with the community in mind at all. Especially since there are so few tree models and no props or decorations in the base game at all, other than you can access with mods or dev mode, which some people just don't want to do. It makes me worry for other missing features like key walls or more props or more decorations, because will they be behind the paid DLC too? That's not going to sit well with people at all. You can tell straight away from the reviews on Steam of this DLC. That's going to be terrible if they do that for them. And some people have suggested that this Beach Properties DLC was the bare minimum that they could give away to pre-purchase and extended edition holders, and I agree with that. I think it's so empty, and according to the propaganda video after the release, these assets have been in development since before the game was even announced. So let's hope that they started work on the region packs at around the same time or before, if we want to see them on time, or you know, whenever they're going to be released. We could be waiting quite a while for that if that's the speed of the development. And again, like I say, this isn't about the actual developers. Those assets look good, they're really good quality, that's really high quality work. I just think they're constrained by deadlines that they have no control over, and that's really poor, because look at the quality of work they can produce. It's definitely worth your money, but it needs a bit more. That's the thing, it needs to be more and a bit more specific as well. The next thing that I've seen a lot of people mention, and I kind of feel it as well, but is slow updates. Okay, I guess we'd all love to see bigger and more frequent updates to fix the game, but I think as a community we're willing to compromise. I really think we do. We'd be happy with less frequent updates with more content, or more frequent updates with less content, but I think it's clear that the majority of people aren't happy with the way that it is now. It's kind of clear the game was released far too early. You know, let's call it what it is. This game is in early access just without the early access label. No matter which way you look at it, the consumers are now testing the game with every patch, and to a degree that feedback is being used to improve the code. That's early access, you know, just with a full release price. I think there would have been a lot more happy people had they have even not necessarily called it early access, but just put a small discount on it. I know it's got a discount on it now, but if they'd have done that from day one, it gives you a lot less reason to complain if you got money off it, right? Which I think is a strategy that they're going down at the moment with the discount. I don't think this is obviously not a place the devs want to be in, and I think they're only in this position because the publisher rushed the release. Was it greed? I don't know, honestly. You can make your own mind up on that. But I would say for most players, a suitable level of content and functionality will be there within 2 years, given the speed and the content of what we're getting. But for harder to please players, a bit like myself, it will be longer. All depending on what features you're waiting for, be it a large collection of DLC, assets, mods, or just a simulation to be working as it's intended to work. Now the next point is the toxic or out of touch public relations. Obviously saying that if you don't like the way the simulation works, then the game isn't for you. That was not a good move at all. That really soured a community who were being constructive with genuine feedback and, you know, trying to help both the devs and the publisher. Ultimately, that's who they're trying to help. This still hasn't been acknowledged as unacceptable by the PR department, doing things like saying there will be no word of the week for the next week because there's a large announcement, only for the announcement to be nothing, comes across as unorganised or unreliable. And the next point, and there's only a point left after this one, so the price, I don't think the price it's subjective, but for me right now it's too expensive for what it is, even on offer, and it might take some years to be worth the price to many people, especially CS1 players that have got all their DLC and all their access to mods, and they like you really getting down with it, you know. The base game needs a lot more content, and you know, for contrast, CS1 is fully fleshed out with great cheap DLC, hundreds of thousands of free mods, and it's half the price that the CS2 base game is. Well, CS2 is basically vanilla CS1 with a graphical update, but none of the content. And while I understand that this game is built up from the ground once again, my earlier point is that a longer wait from the community for a more content-filled base game would have been fine. I can't have seen any people complaining that, you know, it's not going to be released today or whatever, we're going to have to wait a year or two for it. There would have been a bit of kickback, I'm sure, but, and it's, you know, I guess, you know, it's with hindsight now, looking back with hindsight, it would have been way better to hold off that release for a year or two, or a year or half or something, you know, because look, I'm talking a lot of bad things about this game, but from where it is now, from where it was at launch, it's not a massive distance, but it is an improvement and it is going in the right direction. So that's really good. So I'll finish it on the last point. Is kind of a good and bad point. So mods are going to save this game for the majority of players, but be clear, I think if it wasn't for the modders, this game would completely flop. Because I'll be honest, I don't want to play vanilla CS2 at all. I never want to play vanilla CS2 if it's not going to get a bit, like, much more content than it's got already. It's got to get quite a bit. It's really on unstable ground right now, even with mods. I think asset mods will make up the rest of the recovery of the game, granted all the simulation problems are fixed, which I think they will be. I think players will be easier to please, or at least not anger, when they've got thousands of quality free assets to choose from. So my final thought is that of most most people have said CS2 will be a great game in time, better than CS1. I've still got confidence in that, absolutely. And it's true that at the same time, players deserve more for their hard-earned money. After 6 months, I think it's reasonable to expect that the game would feel a lot more finished by now, and yet, to me at least, it feels like it's going to take longer than many of us have already allowed a large compromise in time for. Like I said in the beginning, man, I truly love Cities Skylines. I've got over 2,000 hours in the first game. It's my second favourite game of all time. It's a real close second as well. And I really, really want CS2 to be amazing. I wouldn't make this video otherwise. I'm just trying to put some points across that, you know, many other people say, but maybe I'm saying something differently that they've missed. I don't know. But I think it's important to put the most important things forward, right? So I desperately want to play CS2 at the moment, but there's just too much content lacking. No meaningful simulation of the economy, and little options to detail, and those are the three things that really give me enjoyment in CS2. It's those three things, and for me they're really lacking at the moment. And even when I use mods to open up those abilities, the game slows down with this slowdown bug. At certain population, people have already updated their PCs and spent a lot of money specifically for this game. They really should expect and deserve to get their performance. So to sum it up, they can get loads better, and while it's going to take a long time, I think it's best for people like me that are really quite disappointed with it to shelf it for like 6 months or something, and take a look back in 6 months time. And I think if that way we keep our expectations low, we might feel better when we revisit it. And remember guys, these things are just my opinion. Everybody's experience is valid. If a person is enjoying this game and really loves it, then I'm glad and I'm happy for them, because you know, some of the screenshots I see in the CS2 groups on Facebook, some people's builds are so good, it really inspires me to jump back in just for maybe an hour or something and try something out for when I'm gonna jump back in later, you know, more in depth. But and I think that works in the game's favour. The more people see good things being created in Cities Skylines 2, the more they're going to want to play it, you know, and hopefully that'll incentivise, you know, some more improvements to it. So if you agree or disagree with me, let me know in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you want to see maybe not more content on Cities Skylines 2, but maybe some more videos like this, because I do like analysing things, you know, I like jumping into things. And when I came into Cities Skylines 2, I was so excited for it, and I got my hopes up a little bit, I think, and then they were dashed, and I think a lot of people did that, and you know, that's not been great either. But like I said, it can be great. It can be absolutely great. So if you've liked this video, please leave a like. Again, tell me if you disagree or agree in the comments, and let's have a little discussion. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you guys. Bye bye.
Worship